anatomically modern humans possessed fully developed memory, language, and complex emotional capacity long before the first ancient cities arose. The central historical problem is one of scale. How did localized, biologically bound populations coordinate their actions across continental distances and generational timelines? Bridging that gap required collective organizational consciousness, the ability for a society to preserve and transmit information beyond the reach of a single human mind. We can model this collective capacity using this heuristic equation. Here, communication capacity is determined by physical reach, the persistence of records, exchange frequency, network diversity, the interpretability of languages, and the organizational ability to use that information. In this framework, civilization functions as a historically maintained communication system. Writing and road networks externalized memory and coordination, embedding these cognitive processes into a distributed system. The first step in this process relied on physical objects, like this early accounting device. Long before full writing, settlements used clay tokens to store numerical data that biological memory could no longer reliably hold. The specific physical medium a society chose dictated its temporal persistence. In Mesopotamia and Elam, administrators relied on abundant river clay. When impressed with cuneiform wedges and fired, these tablets formed an enduring institutional memory. These transactional records often survived intact for thousands of years. Egyptian papyrus followed a different logic. It sacrificed the permanence of clay for high portability, allowing scripts to travel easily across long administrative circuits. Early Chinese bureaucracy used rolled bamboo and wooden slips to achieve similar mobility, organizing vertical rows of characters into transportable records. These media did not replace spoken tradition. They formed a hybrid system. The written text provided stability and proof, while a human messenger provided oral context and adaptation. Monumental stone inscriptions served an entirely different organizational function. By carving messages into mountainsides, rulers projected unyielding authority that functioned as a permanent political signal. When states gathered these various records into official archives, they transformed static memory into an active, queryable database. At Persepolis, administrators cross-referenced Elamite, Aramaic, and sealed documents to extend institutional memory well beyond the lifespan of any single official. A civilization's choice of informational hardware defined the spatial and temporal limits of what its state could remember and control. Ancient civilizations developed different communicative strengths, resulting in distinct types of network topology. Achaemenid Iran optimized its architecture for immense reach. Using the royal road and courier relays, it synchronized a sprawling, hierarchical web. This long-range system created a multicultural organizational consciousness, enabling a central ruler to coordinate decisions across continental distances. Classical Greece developed a different geometry. Instead of vast imperial lines, its city-states generated tight, densely clustered feedback loops. This architecture fostered intensive analytical and philosophical debate, prioritizing internal argumentative density over geographic expansion. However, high-volume writing is not the only measure of cognitive complexity. India provides a significant alternative model. Indian society relied on rigorous oral transmission. Specialized monastic and teaching communities formed a high-fidelity, point-to-point network, optimized for preserving complex, introspective, and metaphysical concepts. Rome eventually combined these elements into a legal and infrastructural system, moving military and commercial data along stone arteries that integrated the entire Mediterranean. These distinct geometries, whether long-range, hyperdense, or rigorously oral, dictated the nature of each civilization's collective awareness. The map of a single, continuous Silk Road masks the actual mechanics of the system. Central Asia and its oasis settlements functioned as civilizational interfaces, the synaptic clefts between major imperial hubs. Geographic friction, from high mountain passes to arid deserts, forced continental communication through these specific relay points. Within these nodes, information was actively processed. Local populations translated languages, adapted artistic styles, and merged conflicting belief systems. We can see this processing at work in the transmission of Buddhist teachings as they move from India toward China. As religious and ethical concepts traveled, they were physically anchored into the landscape of new territories, documented on stone pillars like this one. By the time these ideas reached China, they had been reinterpreted by Central Asian monks and grafted onto new architectural and philosophical traditions. Central Asia acted as an active processor, reshaping data as it passed through, rather than serving as a passive transmission wire. Knowledge rarely crossed the continent unchanged. The intermediary processing zones actively reshaped the collective consciousness of the whole network. The brain kinematics model maps this biological architecture directly onto historical geography. In this model, specialized neural regions were civilizations, axonal pathways were trade routes, and active administrative archives served as the system's working memory. According to continuity theory, the recurrent coupling of these autonomous systems produced distributed memory, mutual adaptation, and error correction. However, this integration created new opportunities for centralized control. The same networks that carried philosophy also carried military commands and taxation demands, projecting coercive power over vast distances. A society's actual organizational consciousness is measured by whether local feedback can flow backward to correct the center, or if the network only serves top-down ideology. Despite conflicts and interruptions, the coupling of these empires generated a shared framework of knowledge that no single state could possess alone. By late antiquity, these interconnected systems allowed human societies to coordinate at a scale previously impossible, establishing a transcontinental system where memory and regulation were no longer confined to local experience.